I wish my children greeted me like that. Good evening. I'm Rabbi Batshir Torshio, senior Jewish educator here at the JCCSF. And I want to say how wonderful it feels to be together for what I know will be a meaningful and lively conversation shared between Dr. Becky Kennedy and Minna Dubin. We are all in for a treat. A few words of gratitude before we get started. Big thanks to our neighbor and fiercely independent bookstore partner, Books Inc., for providing copies of That's My Truck. Books Inc. will be selling books in the atrium also immediately following the conversation, and both Dr. Becky and Minna will be signing, so please join us for that. We do anticipate a very healthy, robust signing line, but we'll work hard to move it along as quickly as possible, and we thank you in advance for your patience with that. And to Jane the baker, thank you for providing the delicious dessert reception. As we always say, yes, the cookies really do matter. And you know what, coming off of Passover, I really appreciate clapping for cookies. And our amazing JCCSF staff, we are so grateful for the hard work and dedication you put forth each day to make us shine and make this possible. For sure. To our JCCSF board members, past and present, we thank you for your leadership and your wise counsel and your time. And our dear donors, as a nonprofit organization, we would not be here without your contributions, and we thank you deeply for supporting the meaningful work that we get to do here. For anyone who is not currently a supporter, if you can, please consider the JCCSF in your philanthropic plans. To our ECE community, staff, and families, we want to thank you all for being here tonight, for arranging childcare, for making plans to come to this program with your friends, and for being together in community. And to all of you, our beloved community members, thank you so much for coming out here to be with us this evening. And of course, enormous gratitude to Stephanie Singer, our tireless and oh-so-talented Director of Arts and Ideas, who brings so many relevant and important voices to this stage. You simply rock, Stephanie. So I just want to briefly share an experience that I had while reading Dr. Becky's bestseller, Good Inside. Evidently, I'm not alone in this. It struck me that the parenting philosophy and strategies that Dr. Becky shares align seamlessly with core Jewish values. That life is nuanced. In Hebrew, we say elu ve'elu. Many perspectives can be held at the same time. That parenting is super messy. Just look at families in the Torah and the Hebrew Bible. These are very complicated people indeed. That every child's right is to be heard and seen for the good, capable, unique person that they are. We each contain a divine blueprint, we're taught. And so it's not surprising at all that Dr. Becky's last book was and continues to be a popular book study in Jewish communal spaces. In fact, it was here at the JCCSF just last month. And of course, the book's universal messages are equally prevalent, which speaks to the widespread appeal of Dr. Becky's thinking, her work, and her insights. What a gift. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Minna Dubin, who will be in conversation with Dr. Becky. Minna is the author of Mom Rage, The Everyday Crisis of Modern Motherhood. Her writing on motherhood has appeared in the New York Times, Oprah Daily, The Times, Sunday Magazine, and more. She has also been featured on MSNBC, Good Morning America, The Tamron Hall Show, and NPR. Minna lives close by in Berkeley, California, with her husband and 2 kids, and no pets because, as she says, enough is enough. So please join me in providing a warm welcome to Minna Dubin.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with Dr. Becky and at the San Francisco JCC. Thank you so much for having us. I'm here to moderate a conversation about Dr. Becky's debut picture book, That's My Truck, a Good Inside story about hitting, and her Good Inside parenting philosophies, and just about the challenges of motherhood in general. All of you came out on a Monday night, no less, so I know our incredible guest needs no introduction. But in case a few of you were brought here by your smart mom friends and need a primer, I'll say this. In addition to being a best-selling author, Dr. Becky Kennedy, or just Dr. Becky to most of us, is a clinical psychologist, a mom of 3, and the powerhouse behind Good Inside, a game-changing parenting movement. Some of what we'll talk about tonight are the strategies and effort that go into parenting. We work so hard to get it right. But what we talk less about is the effort it takes and the guilt we experience to not parent. My 8-year-old is in a phase where every time I go out in the evenings, even though her other parent is home with her, she pouts and goes, "Not again!" So I want to start by acknowledging the effort it took for you to not parent and to claim a few hours for yourself by being here. And with that, let's give a warm welcome to our special guest, Dr. Becky Kennedy.
I think so, yeah.
All right. So since all of us probably know you from your culture-shifting work with Good Inside, I want to start off with a question that I think probably a lot of people in this audience might have, which is, how did you come to write a children's book? And can you connect the dots between writing a children's book and the work that we all know with Good Inside?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I want to echo what Minna said. And the other thing we were talking about behind the stage earlier that I want to start with as a disclaimer is I will share a lot of ideas tonight, things even I find myself excited by, and I definitely do not do these things with my own kids all the time. So if you saw me yelling at them in New York or my kid reacting in a certain way, I really mean this. I wouldn't even be embarrassed. I'd be like, I told you. See, here's the proof. Nobody is a perfect parent. In my family, we say perfect is creepy. You're welcome to borrow that, because I think it is. And something weird happens in parenting, I think, that doesn't happen in other areas of our life, where we think committing to learning means committing to being perfect. Where, to me, and then I'm going to answer your question. I really will. It wasn't meant to be a diversion. It was meant to be a beginning. But I really do think that parenting, you could think of like a language, in that you were parented in one language when you were a kid, and most of us want to speak at least a slightly different language to our own children. And I often think I was raised in English, this is true, and if I wanted to speak to my kids in Mandarin, I'm pretty sure you'd say, well, first of all, that's amazing that you're taking that on. And, this is going to take some learning. And then in my hardest moments, I think you'd all probably agree, I'd probably go back to speaking English, right? Some choice words would come out, definitely in English. But I don't think you would tell me that means I've made no progress in Mandarin. I'd kind of go back, to my Duolingo or whatever I had and go back to my Mandarin lessons. And I just want you to keep that model in mind, where I would never learn Mandarin to be perfect at Mandarin. I'm learning it because I think it's valuable, because it feels kind of right in some way, and because I want to do a little bit more of it tomorrow than I do today. That's the best it gets. That's the best it ever gets. Okay, so why this book? Well, there's a couple things. And I always think at Good Inside, we help a parent and we help a kid. If we had to pick, which I don't like picking, arguably, I think we support a parent even more than a kid. And so I was really thinking about that even with children's books, because I know in my home, children's books, my kids are now 7, 10, and 13, but when my kids were younger, especially, I would have a really stressful day. I'm sure you've had days like this too. You're out and you're stressed, or you're home with your kids and you just don't feel like a good parent, and your kid's about to go to bed. And I have this vision of the parent I want to be, but I mean this, like, I can't access her in the moment. And it feels really bad. And there were moments when my kids were growing up, especially when they were younger, where I'd reach for a children's book, and not every book, but some books. I heard myself in my voice saying these things to my kids that I just actually would not have been able to do if it wasn't for the book. But my kid didn't really know the difference, because what ended up happening, it was just a really meaningful moment. And to me then, a children's book can really be a tool to bring connection to you and your kid in a moment where it just might not have been possible because of a million different factors. So that's one of the reasons I love children's books. Now, I have been asked recently, and I've asked myself, like, why hitting of all topics? Like, you just hit it on the nose, hitting. It can't be about, like, confidence, something like a little lighter, I think about seeing parents over and over and over in my private practice. And with, especially with parents of young kids, hitting was often a topic. And it would often be something like this with Charlie and Pia. Some story like, Charlie's mean to Pia, and he's hitting, and he's mean, and he doesn't share his truck, and Pia never hits him, and she's always generous. And there'd be this binary, which I think can happen, especially like if we have 2 kids. It's like I have a good kid and a bad kid. I have a generous kid and a selfish kid. I have a kid who hits and a kid who never hits. And I'd be talking to these parents who would say something like, we need to protect Pia. And I still feel it right now in my body. I just remember thinking in those moments, yes, the Pia of the world needs protection, but like Charlie needs protection too. What about the Charlies of the world? They really need protection from forming an identity as a bad kid. And at the end of the day, we are our children's mirrors, right? A kid forms their identity from the version of themselves we reflect back. Usually not with our words, but with our eyes. And I do these things too, like we look at them like, what is wrong with you? Or, and I just would always hear these stories thinking, well, of course hitting's not okay, but we have this obsession with that question. Oh, so it's okay? Like if I spilled water on myself over and over and tried to figure out why I was spilling water on myself, I don't think you'd say, so it's okay you spill water. I'd be like, well, it's not really okay or not okay. It just keeps happening, and I think I should probably figure out the reason. It's not okay someone hits. It's just kind of an irrelevant, kind of label. Why is a kid hitting? And I do have a belief that kids are good inside. I have a belief, for what it's worth, that you're good inside too, and that we all can do not so good things when we're overwhelmed or scared. And it's something that's really the cornerstone of good inside, that when your kids act out, you have a good kid who's having a hard time, not a bad kid doing bad things. And I think that fork in the road from how we think about our kid, do I have a good kid having a hard time, or do I have a bad kid doing bad things? We're all obsessed with strategies and scripts. The single most important thing is the mindset you're in. Because you're only going to say the thing or pull the strategy from kind of the mindset bucket you're in. So the most important thing in my mind is getting into the practice of saying, like, I have a good kid having a hard time, which never makes hitting okay. It just gives you a framework to actually understand it, help your kid build skills, and then actually change behavior. And so I think the reason I started with this is I just have always felt like, I don't know, I have a thing for misunderstood kids. I want to be a champion for them. And I think the kids who hit and act out and get labeled as bad kids, they are deeply, deeply misunderstood. And parents are overwhelmed and need another tool kind of in their house to access, the parent they want to be.
You took my next question about hitting, and it's so funny that you talked about your body. You were like, I can feel it in my body. Because when I wrote the question, I wrote down, I can feel my cortisol level rising when I think about my child's physical aggression phase. And I think it is an extremely triggering experience. when we were in the back, you were talking about, I wanted to ask about timeouts and using punishment as a parenting strategy. And I felt nervous because I don't want to shame parents who are still using that strategy. I mean, myself included sometimes. And I loved the way that you talked about it. And I would love if you could tell us what is really happening for a mom when she's giving a timeout.
So I can answer this in a couple ways. So I'm just going to first, I'm not going to make you raise hands. But if I asked the audience who punishes their kids or gives time out sometimes, I'm just telling you my hand would be the first one up. Okay? And I don't even mean like years ago, like still now, you know? Because I'll go on record. Because the truth is when we give a timeout, and definitely when we give a punishment or a threat, I'm laughing at one, you know, like, if you keep hitting your sister, no dessert tonight, right? And then, like, we get to the night, and then if you're like me, you're saying things like, berries and whipped cream are not dessert. So you can have berries and whipped cream, because there's fruit. So, and I think, and this is one of the things we were talking about, like, I think when we say these things, we're actually just so desperate. Like, we have no idea what to say, clearly. We're making threats even we don't want to keep. Like, who wants to take away dessert at the end of the night? You're like, I want my kid to have a meltdown right before bed. We don't even want that, right? So we say that, or we give a timeout, and then and by the way, I was trained in that method, so I used to teach people how to give timeout. So I know you have a 2-minute timeout for hitting your sister, and if you choose not to take the timeout, you can choose to lose this privilege, and then you're losing a privilege, and it's so complicated. But I just think we don't know what to do. And so usually those moments, they come out of a time when you're feeling helpless, desperate, and to some degree, I think, and no one likes to talk about this, but I like to talk about things people don't like to talk about. So I think you see your kid do something bad, like they hit their sister, and a part of you is like, I need to make my kid like feel as bad as I feel right now. So if I say something that makes them upset, and they're like, no, I don't want a timeout. No, don't take away my iPad. There's something that happens to us like, okay, like we convince ourselves because they had that reaction, we're doing something, right? And people love to say this when you don't do, oh, you're gonna do nothing? Charlie just hit me, or you're gonna do nothing? It's always very interesting to me, doing something, doing nothing. Doing nothing on the outside means you're being an adult and regulating yourself on the inside. That's really what it means. You're doing a whole lot on the inside. Doing something on the outside, I mean, this usually means you're doing nothing on the inside, right? You just vomit your frustration onto your kid and you make a threat and then give them berries and whipped cream anyway. And then you're like, and it's Hershey Kiss, it's fine, right? So I think these are some of the reasons we do it. I think another reason we do it is something I call the fast forward error. Tell me if you've done this. Okay, you see your kid hitting their sibling, and then immediately the next thought is like, my kid is a sociopath, they're gonna go to jail. My kid's a sociopath, that's what's happening, right? And your kid's like 4, right? But you're picturing them in jail, and then like, you don't know how you're gonna visit them. Like you just had this whole story and you're like, it all went wrong because I didn't take away their dessert when they hit their sister, right? And I think that's really powerful to notice. I call it the fast forward error, right? And we all fast forward different amounts of time. Maybe you have your kid clinging to you. It's the same thing. They're never gonna have friends. How are they gonna go to kindergarten if they can't separate at 2? How are they gonna be able to sleep over at a friend's house if they can't say bye to me at soccer class? And then what happens in the fast forward error is you respond based on all the feelings you've accumulated from those like 20 years instead of anything that's happening in the moment, which is another way of saying you respond from fear. We're fearful about what something means about the future, and we don't respond based on the present. We respond based on the fear of this exaggerated future. It's actually just helpful to like put that in your back pocket to ask yourself, like, am I doing the fast forward error? Come back to today. You know, it's April 21st, 2025. I have a 4-year-old, and then this phrase is helpful to get you back to the moment. I have a good kid having a hard time. It's always helpful. Okay, so still, we do these things. right? Because I think there's bigger reasons. We weren't set up to do this whole parenting thing successfully by the world, right? Sure, a lot of you remember, do you remember leaving the hospital and you were like, what? What? All I need is a car seat? Really? Really? Like, all I need is a car seat? Like, no one tells you, by the way, this parenting thing doesn't come naturally. I'll go on record in saying that too. The only thing that comes naturally in parenting is how you were parented. The only language of parenting that comes naturally is the language you were brought up with. That kind of makes sense, right? And so we don't invest in education. We don't learn how to set boundaries. We don't learn how to tolerate our kid being upset with us. We're definitely not taught it in school. Probably should be, but we're not. And then I think we become parents, and then if you're like a lot of people, especially a lot of moms, you think it shouldn't be this hard. I should be able to figure this out on my own, right? And so then we do generally, and I mean this with so much love for the way Instagram has helped me in my career, okay? But like we think the most important job in the world that we care the most about, we should learn with reels on Instagram. Right? Like I don't know any of us who'd see a surgeon who's like, I do not need to go to med school. Nope, not me. Got some reels, really helpful, really good, right? Actually, we see medical doctors take pride. They put their degree on the wall. They brag about it. And then they're like, oh, I also did this residency and I have this mentor. And look at all the kind of time and energy I've invested, not spent, I've invested to be the doctor I'd want to be. It's actually the world I want to build for parents, because the more we invest in true education and support, the less often we'll have desperate moments where we're saying random things we don't believe in, right? Still we do. Beyond not feeling good, I happen to think they don't work. Like to me, a lot of child development you can think about in very similar ways as you think about kids learning any other skills. At the heart of what we teach at Good Inside is emotion regulation skills, right? Kids are born with all the feelings and none of the skills. And anytime feelings overpower skills, they come out in bad behavior. Yes, this is also true for yourself, for your partner, for the person at work. Feelings overpowered skills. And I think for centuries, we've kind of punished the kid's behavior, or maybe kind of punished the feelings also. But the feelings aren't kind of the problem. They're a problem, but they're not the problem. They're a symptom of the problem. The problem is that kids don't have skills to manage anger, or skills to manage worry, or skills to manage jealousy, or skills to manage disappointment. And if you shift your perspective from the behavior is the problem to the skill gap is the problem, you would intervene like we intervene kind of for other skill gaps, like swimming. Swimming's a great example. How many people, raise your hand if you have or are thinking of investing money and time in swimming lessons for your kids? Like I have. This is actually amazing, right? So think about how long you tolerate the time between your kid doesn't know how to swim until they do swim. I don't know, it's like a lot of years. Right? Yeah. And I always think about this. Picture being with your kid in a pool and your kid's not swimming and someone on the side goes, oh, Minna, aren't you reinforcing bad behavior? Like you're kind of saying it's okay to not swim by like being there with them. You know, or think about a swim coach saying, go to your room and come back when you know how to swim. Right? And if someone was having a bad day at swim class and then next week the swim coach said, hey, why don't you come early? We're gonna get some extra time in the pool. I mean this, and my heart's beating fast again. I just don't know one person who'd say that person is permissive. That person is reinforcing, not swimming. That kid had a hard time in swim class and now they're giving them extra time to swim. I think you'd say that makes sense. My kid is going to swim when they know how to swim, and some kids learn faster and some kids take longer, but you can't cut off the process before it has time to prove itself out. Now, the other thing that I find interesting about swimming is you know signs to look for success. I don't know one person who thinks their kid's gonna swim the next week, right? And actually your kid puts their head in the water, they start blowing bubbles, and you get excited because on some level you know, okay, they're not there yet, but this is part of the arc. kids don't go from not having skills to manage anger to being perfectly able to manage anger. They don't. And when we teach them, they still act out, they still have tantrums, right? I mean, all of us still have trouble managing all those feelings too, right? So timeouts, punishments, threats, all of these things. This is like a multiple thing is true. We all say them sometimes because we're under-resourced, we're tired, and we're just undereducated, right? That's number one. Number two, perfect is creepy. You're gonna say things sometimes. I'm sure we'll talk about repair later. Repair is always available. And then three, I just encourage you to say, like, what would be different if whatever the thing is that's on my kid's mind that's like driving me up the wall, if I thought of it as a skill deficit, not a character deficit? How would that change how I intervene? And the last thing I'll say, and then I'll give it back to you, is how would that change how I feel about my kid? Because I think when our kids act out and we're in punishment mode and kind of like, what is wrong with them, and fast forward mode, I really do believe we always love our kid, but I really think we stop liking our kid. And I think they feel that. And I think that's what we feel at night, and that's why we can't go to bed. It's just like, it's a horrible feeling. And I think the thing about good inside that's so heartening and that we hear, to be honest, like from the people who are like really in it, who are like maybe done some of those workshops we have, they're like, I like my kid better, I feel closer to my kid, and I'm watching my kid change in like actually substantial ways. And to me, that's what this is all about.
Thank you. I want to talk about repair since you brought it up. I am someone, believe it or not, even though I wrote the book Mom Rage, I mess up sometimes and get mad and sometimes even yell. And repair is so important. And I would love if you could tell us, like, the tenets of repair, like how you see it, of repairing specifically with your children when you mess up.
Great. Yeah, which obviously I do.
Which obviously
Yes.
we all will.
Obviously. This is actually my favorite topic. I lie a lot and say things are my favorite topic, but this one, I'm not lying, I swear. It really is, because I think if there's one strategy that really matters to get very good at, it's repair. And I kept that vague because I actually think it's the strategy to get really good at in parenting, in partnership, at work, anywhere. So what is repair? Repair is kind of the act of going back to a moment that didn't feel good, taking responsibility for your part, stating what you would do differently the next time. What repair does is it helps your child understand a moment without blaming themselves and believing they're the cause. Kids are always searching for meaning. They have to make sense of what's happening around them. And actually the most important thing is to keep you as kind of their like good, amazing adult, because kids need food, shelter, and water, but they're very vulnerable. They literally need you to get food, shelter, and water, and love, and all the other things. And so they have to figure out, how do I stay in a relationship with my parent? And so when something scary happens, which happens for all of us, okay? You yell at your kid, what's wrong with you? Or we say these awful things. Now my kid is alone, and the irony is we're so focused on like, oh my goodness, I messed up my kid. The event itself, whatever it is, isn't what kind of messes up a kid. I don't love the phrase messes up, but it's how we all think. The event doesn't mess up a kid. What messes up a kid is not repairing after an event. Because it's not even events that have the biggest impact on kids. Even if we talk about trauma, trauma isn't an event. Trauma is how an event gets processed in your body. It's really an event stored in aloneness. That's what trauma is. Events that are high emotionality, very confusing, very unexpected, very awful, stored in aloneness. That second part, we actually have a good amount of kind of control over. And so if I don't go say to my kid some version of a repair, which I'll give an example, my kid say, okay, like that felt really, really bad. Oh, it must be my fault. I'm a bad kid. There's this Ronald Fairburn quote that I remember hearing in grad school that always stuck with me. For a kid, it is better to be a sinner in a world ruled by God than to live in a world ruled by the devil. Meaning, if I'm a kid and I need my parent to survive and this bad thing happened and no one talks to me about it, either I'm good and my parent's bad, or I'm bad and my parent's good. Guess which world a kid can operate in? Only one. They have to internalize the badness. And so they do. And if you're wondering and already connecting another dot to, is that one of the reasons even now as an adult when anything kind of goes poorly, I blame myself? Yes, that is why. No child is born with kind of a soundtrack of self-blame. But a lot of us had events that felt bad that were stored in aloneness. And so we've kind of become expert at pairing things that feel bad with blaming ourselves, even though it's probably more about our childhood than it is about today. And so when you repair, and I do picture this with my kids when I repair, I picture something bad happening and then this like story of self-blame, and I literally do think I'm like snatching it out of their body. It's kind of amazing if you're someone who's driven by impact. Like, I can stop that, not by being perfect, but by repairing. By saying, hey, I'm sorry I yelled. It's not your fault when I yell. And I'm working on staying calmer and talking to you respectfully even when I'm frustrated. Now, I know we're going to have to go to some audience questions, but let me just say, I feel like I know what at least 80% of you are thinking. Like, but isn't it like kind of their fault? You know, it's like kind of their fault. You know, like if they put on their shoes, like I wouldn't have, yelled. So I just want to speak to that because I think when we have that mindset, we tend to say things like, look, I'm sorry I yelled, but if you put on your shoes the first time, it wouldn't have happened, right? I've said that. I'm sure all of us have. There's a couple things about this. Number one, I think our kids being able to accept responsibility, take accountability, is a phrase I hear a lot about. Our kids don't learn from textbooks and lessons. They learn from the behavior we model. So I'm sorry I yelled, but it wouldn't have happened if XYZ is a really good example of delaying accountability for your child. Second, I don't know why, but I picture my son when he's older. I don't know, let's say he's partnered with someone and I'm in his house and he's yelling at his partner, like, you forgot the toilet paper or whatever. And if I hear him say, like, I'm sorry I yelled, but if you remember the toilet paper, I wouldn't have yelled at you. And I think we laugh, but I think we'd actually all be really creeped out by that and actually say that's like a really, really toxic way of speaking to someone. And if you want no part of your child saying that, well, our kids will learn to communicate with others based on how we communicate with them. And so maybe tonight, really, could be the first night. And I really mean this, like to repair even for how we've repaired. I think in the past I've said sorry, but it hasn't really been the best sorry. The truth is, how I manage my own emotions, I mean, I think we don't have to say this to them, but let's be honest, between us, it predated our kids' existence. It doesn't really even have anything to do with them if we're able to manage frustration, right? But that's on me, and I'm working on that. Quick poll, this is a poll. How many of you had parents who, not like the bad apology I gave, but who truly did repair with you in the way I described? Raise your hands. Okay, and I actually want everyone to look around and how it's, very, very few. Okay, so I've actually started asking this in audiences, and it's like always like 2 to 3% of people. I don't know, it's really low. And so I just think what's amazing, because you're all a community here, I'll probably live kind of nearby. I find it very hopeful that we could be an entire movement, like generation of parents who are probably the first people in our like lineage to truly repair with our kids. And going back to the only thing that comes naturally in parenting is how you were parented. I just know what that means for our kids is when they're adults and someone says like a question about repairing with their own kids is going to be so easy because you did the work of doing something differently than your parents did. And so repair feels hard because it's new. Anything we do that is different from how our parents were with us is going to feel awkward and unfamiliar and very, very hard because you are literally carving out a new circuit. And I think there's a million places we can be cycle breakers, but probably none more worthy than repair. So, and with that.
Yeah, that's a good ending. We are going to have a chance for audience questions, but just before we get
Oh, good.
there,
Yes.
I would love for you to tell us what we can expect is coming next from you. Is there another children's book in the works? Or?
Oh, there's going to be a lot. So we have 2 more children's books that are already kind of going to be coming. So very, very excited about that. There's a couple things from Good Inside you can expect to see. I mean, I think where I probably spend my most time, I don't know, is like in our app, is in our membership. I think this is another big picture thing that's interesting, especially in San Francisco, right? Kind of, there's so much tech, there's so much innovation. There's so little tech innovation for parents. Like, we have apps that make 1 million parts of our life more convenient. And I bet all of those parts of our life probably have less of an impact on the world than how we raise the next generation of kids and how we feel about ourselves in the process. And so to me, what I'm really excited about is we live in a time now where, like, you wish you could text me a question that you literally can. That's like in our app. That's an amazing thing. You want to connect with other parents who have a certain issue or ask a parent coach a question, like, we can actually do all that right on your phone. And I'm just so excited about the way we can leverage like the best parts of technology and AI so parents just feel less alone. They don't feel like they have to do it on their own, and they actually just feel more empowered themselves, and they feel good going to sleep at night. Like, I want every parent to feel really proud of themselves as a parent. Again, not because you're perfect, but because you have like clarity in like what my role is and what to do when something's hard. That's kind of like the world like I'm really excited to build. So that's what's coming next.
Yeah, all right. That sounds wonderful. So we're going to have a little time for our audience Q&A. So if you have a question, there are mics. Is that right that the mics are down on the 2 sides? Or are you just going to raise your hand? Okay. Yeah. You're just going to raise your hand. And let's try and keep our questions brief because there's so many of you. And just remember that questions have a question mark at the end. All right.
First question here on your left.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. I am not a parent. I am a former educator who is working to connect parents with educators directly. I think my big question is, you're talking about these behaviors, like hitting, biting is the one that comes up for me a lot. There's a lot of sensitive emotions that parents have in response to biting towards educators, towards other parents, towards the child that created this action. But it's a developmental stage. Can you talk a little bit more about how you handle biting?
So to me, like, honestly, I call these all problem behaviors just because they're all problematic behaviors. Hitting, kicking, pushing, spitting, biting, they're physical. They're all, and I find this might be helpful to think about, they'd be called like externalizing behaviors. We all get overwhelmed by emotions, and all kids and adults tend to be prone to more externalizing behaviors when they're very overwhelmed. It comes out. Or internalizing, kind of push it in, right? For kids, that would look like somatic complaints. So I have a stomach ache, or I have a headache, or depression, anxiety later on, are kind of internalizing, right? And we do. When kids are young, we talk a lot about the externalizing stuff because we see it, and it's so intense, and it affects other kids. So number one, to me, the framework, and it is a framework, not a strategy, not even a script, for biting too. This is a good kid who's having a hard time. We have to be able to hold 2 things at once. This is a good kid having a hard time, and we're gonna try to figure out how biting should happen less often. Those are equally true. We somehow struggle to see that, right? So both of them are true. So let's say your kid, whether your kid is biting or was bitten, first of all, that stinks. Again, it actually it stinks for both kids. It's an awful thing to be bitten. That's awful. And it's an awful thing to be so out of control that you watch yourself bite another child. That is also awful. And we don't have to compare which is more awful. They just both are awful. They're both bad experiences. Another thing I would say is with teachers. To me, one of the most powerful things you can say to a teacher when you're talking about something that happened in a class is just, let me say from the start, I know we're both on the same team. like if it's Charlie, we're both Team Charlie. That is really true. Both parent and teacher in these situations are they're probably both sensitive to thinking that the other person thinks they're doing a bad job. That even idea makes us be kind of defensive. Then when someone gets defensive, the other person gets more aggressive. And a lot of this can a little bit be curbed by conversations with teachers, just starting, parent or teacher, being the first one to say, we are both Team Charlie. This is a good kid who's having a hard time, something like that. Something we didn't get to talk to, but I think is the most overlooked thing for hitting or biting or stealing is the best strategy you really have is prevention. Okay, so let's say biting or hitting. Like, we all know if we have a kid who, when they get overwhelmed, they hit. Like, we've seen it now a couple times. You know, I know which one of my kids back in the sandbox day was going to take another kid's toy and run away with it. Like, I know every time. And somehow, with this knowledge, we don't do what we need to do as a leader. Stop the behavior from happening in the first place. It's a very, very awful feeling for a kid to know that there's no adult protecting them. Like, my teacher knows I'm biting other kids. Why are they even letting me get near the blocks? My parent knows I'm biting. Why are they leaving me alone with another kid on a play date while there's only one red fire truck? Really, like, why? Why are we setting ourselves up for that? My parent knows I'm young and I don't have a lot of impulse control. Why are they even leaving the iPad out in a visible space when it's not iPad time? Like, and I really mean this. These are, so many times parents say, my kid isn't listening, and I mean this with love. I'll say it directly to you like I would say to them, no, that's not the issue. You are not setting a boundary. You're not. Learning the signs before a kid bites. So if this is a kid in the classroom, this is hard. Every classroom's different. There's only a certain number of teachers. But this is a kid who needs to be watched before. Not because they're a bad kid, actually because they're a good kid and we want to help them, right? We set boundaries for our kid, not to our kid. So these kids need to be watched. They need to be pulled aside sooner. Oh, looks like it's going to be hard with only one truck. That's when you take a deep breath. And also the beauty of that is that's before you get so frustrated and so triggered, so you are at your best. Same thing kind of at home. I think if you're on the kind of the kid who was bit side, look, I think it's reasonable to say to a school or to another parent if there's a play date, hey, you have a good kid having a hard time. I know that. Like, I just want to know what will be done differently next time. Sounds like this kid might also need some protection. Can that kid be followed a little more closely just to recognize signs earlier? But to me, too much is focused on after the behavior and something punitive instead of something earlier just to stop it from happening. I'd also say, while we're at it, I'm not a big fan of forced apologies, even though that probably doesn't surprise anyone. So a kid who bites and is like full of shame and being like, are you going to apologize to Pia? It's a really good way to set the clock back on the age they'll be at which they apologize naturally. Shame is an animal freeze kind of response state, right? We know a lot about fight or flight. Freeze is also an animal defense state, and shame brings that on. So I would not force an apology. I'd model one. Oh, I'll use your apology voice for you. Oh, I'm sorry I bit. I was overwhelmed. That was not okay, and that looked like it hurt. I'm going to work on that. And yes, I would literally say that. And then, even though I'd want to, I would try not to say to my kid, that wasn't so hard, right? And just move on and trust that the modeling and the de-shaming really helped.
Hi.
Hi. Yes.
Kind of continuing on with that with older kids, my question is, what is the I won't let you equivalent to yelling and cursing for, like, I have a 10,
Yeah.
for the older kids, because a lot of your strategies have really worked, but especially like with homework when he's just really frustrated, but I can't tolerate all the yelling. So what is the I won't let you equivalent?
Totally, yeah. So there's not a lot we can do to actually stop a kid from saying certain things, right? Now, I think, again, and I haven't actually said this, so I'll say it. Boundaries are, to me, one of the most misunderstood terms out there, and you can't do something well if we don't know what something is, right? So boundaries are what you tell your kid you will do, and they require your kid to do nothing. By the way, I would say in adult relationships, a boundary is what you tell another adult you would do, and they would require another adult to do nothing, which is why the phrase, they don't respect my boundaries, usually just tells me someone does not have an accurate definition of boundaries. Because you're giving all of your power away to a child or to, like, your mother-in-law, right? Neither are great. Neither are great ideas. So that's what a boundary is. So that's why saying I won't let you hit is a boundary. I'm not saying stop hitting. It's really interesting. I'm going to tell my kid to stop hitting when they're showing me they can't stop hitting. No wonder they get worse. They're like, I really mean this. They're scared. They're like, is there an adult here? Like that's your best bet, you know? Now it's different when your kid's screaming, right? However, if you go back to a boundary, your boundary in the screaming situation could be saying, I love you, you're a good kid. I'm not going to stay here while you continue to scream in my face because, sweetie, it's actually not good for either of us. Another big idea, kids feel your intention over your intervention. I could say the same thing differently. I'm not going to stay here while you scream at me like a crazy person. They will not find that helpful, right? Or even if I say the first line exactly the same. I'm not going to stay here while you scream at me. It's not good for either of us. This is why scripts, again, it's why we shortchange ourselves when we're looking for a script. It's not going to be what's felt by someone. So if your intention is, and I've had this with one of my kids, it really isn't good for this kid of mine, my daughter, to like, when you watch yourself be nasty to someone over and over, you're like, why are you letting me do that to you? So I would intervene from that place. Now, I think also a good question to ask ourselves is there's getting good at handling hard moments, and then there's doing things in calm moments to have fewer hard moments. I don't know about you, but I would pick the second, personally. Like, I don't think we just want to become an expert at tantrums and rudeness. We'd rather just have fewer tantrums and rudeness, right? But that stuff actually all has to do not what you do in the moment. It's the little things we do outside the moment. So one thing with screaming or curse words is, how can I approach my kid like we're really on the same team, as opposed to kind of on opposite teams? Whenever you approach anyone like you're on opposite teams, it's a sure bet way to make sure nothing productive happens, ever, at work, in a partnership with your kid, until you can be on, I'm actually on the same team as my kid against yelling. I'm on the same team as my kid against cursing at grandma's house, whatever it was. It's actually important to not intervene. So let's just take cursing, if this was really an issue. I'd probably say something like this to my kid. It might sound controversial. I'd be like, look, cursing, fuck, whatever you want to say, these are words. It's not that big of a deal. You're eventually going to learn where to use them and where not to. We're going to do something weird. You know that bathroom? Whenever you want, you just go into the bathroom, just say fuck like 1,000,000 times. And then if it was really me, if you want to make your kid stop doing something, do it with your kid. I'm not joking. You make it very uncool immediately. So if this was really me, I'd probably say, you know what? I have some F-bombs in me too. Beginning of every day I do. I mean, don't you? Right? So I'd say, me and you are going to go into the bathroom together, and we're going to get him out. And if you're wondering, would she really do this? I would really do this. And I would just do it. First of all, it's like probably the best cure for mom rage that there is, right? Just get him out at 7 a.m., right? I'd be like, and then now that we're on the topic, this is how I do it. Be with my kid. First of all, he'd be shocked. He'd be like, oh my God, what is happening, right? I'd be like, fuck. You know what? I think I'm good. You have tomorrow? I'll meet you at breakfast. You do your thing. And then I'd walk out. Same thing with yelling. Same thing with younger kids, like poop, pee, vagina, penis, whatever kids want to say all the time. Amazing. Now instead of, look, kids have and especially as they get older, but at any age, especially our kind of strong-willed kids, they have an intense desire to feel like an independent person, which we want for them. We just don't want them to find that just with using curse words. But the truth is, the more you resist your kids with things, you are basically saying to them, the way you can feel like an independent person is blank, is by cursing, because you watch me get upset. I mean, we remember what it was like to be a teen. Oh, my parents upset? Oh, I guess I'm my own person now, right? Like, it's cheap and easy. So when you take that element out and you kind of work with them, then they actually can figure out who they are independently by like pursuing their interests or something productive. Maybe.
It's like a special bonus if the parents get upset.
Seriously, exactly.
Thank you. Next question on your left.
Hi, I have 2.5-year-old twins, so we're really in the thick of it right now. And with my husband's second job, a lot of parenting is done solo by each of us. And what's coming up is whether it's hitting, biting, or even just general feelings, because they're 2.5. I have one that feels a lot more than the other. So how do I don't want to remove her, but she needs help to calm. But then if I'm calming her, then he is spiraling. And it's like, how do I solo manage that consistently?
I see a lot of people nodding. Yes, and I just want to say that's just starting with, like, that's really hard. And I actually get questions like this a lot. Like, I have 2 twins, or 2.5. Of course, it's like the hardest age, right? Or I have a 4-year-old who's writing with Sharpie on the wall, and my 7-year-old is keying my car, and my 10-year-old is like doing something weird somewhere. Like, what would I do? And I really mean this. Like, I'm gonna have something better to say than just this, but I really mean this. Like, I definitely do not have magic answers for those moments. Like, my best answer, and then I'll get more specific, is in those moments, I think the best it gets is we do what we can to not pour a ton of more gas onto the fire, knowing that there's really not much we can do to make the fire kind of burn out quickly. You actually can't do that. So it's like, can I just contain what I can contain and survive this moment and tell myself that that really is the best it gets. And I actually think that's probably the most important point is there something unconscious where I think there's some like answer here? Like, I have 2.5-year-olds, I'm alone. Like, at 2.5, they're like a danger to like themselves, to others, to your house, to the Sharpies, to whatever else they're doing, right? And so number one, in the moment, I would try just to give yourself a ton of compassion. Like, it's my favorite mantra, like, this feels hard because it is hard, not because I'm doing something wrong. So much of our reactivity comes because on some level there's a narrative, this should be easier, I should be able to figure this out, parenting shouldn't be this hard. It's kind of always playing in the background. And then we tell a story to anyone like, oh, my twins are so difficult, my 3-year-old and my 7-year-old are so difficult. And don't get me wrong, they're all difficult. But the reason they feel as hard is because of this narrative that's exacerbating the distress. It should be easier. It shouldn't be easier. 2.5-year-old twins, one having a meltdown and the other one like just still being 2.5, that shouldn't be easy. It really shouldn't be. And nobody has figured that out. I definitely have not. Have a good night. No, I have something else to say. No, so I think in the moment, just telling yourself that really helps. A line I used a lot when my kids were young and everything was impossible, because I think the thing we do the least of, but is the most helpful, is just name what's true. I always think of that. Name what's true. And I remember I used to say, like, let's say it's Charlie and Pia. Charlie, like, right now you need mom. And Pia, you need mom. And you both need mom. And there's only one mom. No one's getting what they want. And it's kind of amazing. I even think at 6 months, like, I mean, I would say starting from the day they're born, like, babies, again, they get your intention. They get, like, you're trying to understand me and give me a story. So there's something to naming that nobody's getting what they want. That's number one. Number two, just reminding yourself, again, that, like, you're safe. And this is not an emergency. It's another go-to mantra. I'm safe. This is not an emergency. I can cope with this, because our bodies tend to, especially if we're like on the very empathic, noticing everything around us side, our bodies confuse things. Like, my kid's tantrum, which feels like a 5-alarm fire in their body, if it feels like a 5-alarm fire in your body, there's a porousness there that's not actually that helpful. Like, that's their horrible experience, and we need to be witness to it and contain it, but it's not us. The only other thing I'll say in advance is it's remarkable how talking about some stuff in advance with your kids really do help at any age. Hey, when your brother has a hard time, I might do this. I might pick you up. I might say, oh, Charlie's having a hard time. I might put you in the crib. I might say, I'm going to be right back. And then I'm going to be back, and you might be upset. And I know you're safe, and you know you're safe, and mommy always comes back. And then what always helped me, especially when my kids were young and weren't as verbal as they are now or old, is when I went through the motions with them, when I had to do it. First of all, I already had practice, but I was like, we've kind of like rehearsed this, like, you know the deal. So I felt more confident doing it because I didn't have like, oh, I'm abandoning them. I was like, we've all kind of done this as a drill before.
This is going to be the last question.
Your work has meant so much to me, so thank you. All right, so my question is actually about irritation and annoyance. Yeah, like a lot of your work is around things that really have to be corrected, that are kind of wrong or dangerous. And my 4-year-old's at a stage right now where she baby talks, and it's like, oh my God, it drives me up the wall, right? And the deeper question here is how and when is it appropriate to let your kid feel your preferences and your feelings, and instead of kind of mediating them or modulating them, to just be really irritated and to ask them to knock it off because you want them to knock it off and for no other reason.
So I think this is a great question, and there's something in here that applies, I mean, definitely like all questions to all of us. And I'm going to shift your question a little bit because I think there's some other questions underneath it that we're not naming. What is going on for me when I'm very triggered and annoyed by my kid? I think what is going on for me when blank is to me like one of the most important questions we ask ourselves. It's a sign that you're willing to self-reflect instead of just kind of point a finger outward, which is, again, not what we'd want our kids to do. Now, often when I say this to parents, you're like, oh, so there's parents who like whining. There's parents who like baby talk. We do this like weird binary. I have not met many parents who like whining or baby talk, just for the record. I've met a lot of parents. But again, we shortchange what's really happening. No, a lot of people don't like it, but there's a lot between liking and being really annoyed and triggered, right? If I'm so compelled to shut something down in my kid, that probably has something to do with me and things that happened in my life before I had a kid. That's what a trigger is, right? Triggers, I mean, this like quick reaction, so annoying, I want to shut it down, right? Triggers are stories from our past that come alive in our present. And what's kind of amazing about having kids is I always think everything that's unhealed about our own childhood comes out before our eyes when we have kids. And we either avoid it and a little bit pass it on, or we kind of use this opportunity to say, oh my goodness, I can work on this not only for my kid's sake, but actually even more, and I mean this, for my sake. So baby talk is, and I'll talk about whining, they're similar. What about baby talk triggers us? It's usually about what something represents. What does baby talk represent? I would say, I'm just going to go on a limb here. Helplessness, dependency, probably. So if that triggers me, what does whining represent? Usually, again, helplessness. It's kind of the opposite of pull up your bootstraps. Like if you were raised in a family that was like, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about, then you are probably triggered by whining and baby talk. Because they're kind of the opposite. My kids feel safe enough, even as they get older, to just kind of melt. And then, by the way, and we'll get back to triggers, something really unproductive happens. We look to shut it down, and then again, it becomes the thing our kid can use to define themselves as independent. Totally counterproductive. We all have parts of us that are independent and parts that are dependent. We all have moments when we really need help from someone else, and we want to express helplessness, and other moments where we could be totally capable of figuring things out on our own. And so often we're triggered when we see something in our kid that we had to learn to shut down in ourselves. So for this, what would I do? And what's the balance of the self-reflection? And I get your questions also like, can my kid just stop? Because I get it, it is really annoying. And I'll join you in that. Because I like to kind of think of myself as hyper independent and capable too. I think the self-reflection is the most important piece because we don't see and hear what's in front of us, right? We see and hear what's in front of us based on the framework we have, right? And so as soon as you change your framework and even just say to yourself, what if I was just curious? Like, what is so annoying about this for me? Let me play it out. And play it out in your head now. My kid's doing baby talk. And someone's just like, okay, I'm sure we all know, like, keep asking why until it doesn't. Why does that annoy me? And well, you always have surface things first because it's just like a really irritating sound. Why, right? Oh, because like who wants to be a baby again? Can't they just, act like a big kid? Why does that annoy me? You keep asking yourself, and it probably has something to do with something deeper. And even asking yourself that question is going to make it easier to stay calm. Because I think when we say, can I just shut it down? And my kid, I think again, an almost upgraded question is, can I be reflective enough to understand my triggers? Can I learn how to regulate myself? Because if that's the place I say to my kid, look, I can tolerate another minute of baby talk and there's just something about it I can't continue, that is a completely different intervention than what I think a lot of us do. Stop whining, stop being such a baby, right? Which isn't really about being annoyed, it's actually about being triggered and unable to manage our own emotional reaction, which again is a very, very big difference. The other thing I would just say about whining and baby talk is it's kind of amazing what happens in your relationship with your kid when you allow it or even allow yourself to embrace it. Meaning, like, what would it be like if the next time my kid had baby talk, I joined them in baby talk? We were just babies together. I mean it. I actually wasn't even trying to be funny. Like, truly. Play. What would happen? What is my kid looking for? Are they looking to feel young again? Am I pregnant? Do they have an older sibling? Are they about to go to kindergarten? Have I been traveling a lot for work? Are they kind of saying through baby talk, like, will you still take care of me? Is it okay to need you sometimes? What if I just kind of gratified that curiosity? What about whining? My kid's whining, right? What if, like, I know my kid always whines because they don't like dinner. What if I front-ended that? Kind of like the cursing. And the next time my kid comes in, I go, I know what you're going to say. And me too. Oh, I hate chicken. I hate it. I hate it so much. Don't you hate it? I mean, your kid, first of all, is probably going to laugh, right? Then maybe you can model something else. Oh, sorry. You know what? It's not my favorite. I can deal, right? But there's nothing, I promise you there's nothing dangerous that will happen from like leaning in to your kids. Again, not dangerous behaviors, but just their annoying one. And to some degree, your kid's saying, I'm trying to figure something out. I'm trying to express something. I'm trying to get a need met. And if we shortchange that before we understand it, we actually just make our kids do it even longer and more intensely because we're all pretty devoted to trying to get our needs met. So I guess it's a complicated answer. First, when your kid's triggering you, I think it's powerful as an adult to say, like, what is this really about for me? What is coming up? What might this represent? Second, focus on regulating yourself in the moment and intervening from there. Third, play around with joining in. Like, what would happen if you joined in the bedtime delay one night? Not every night, the whining, whatever it was. And then number 4, when you're really regulated, of course you can always say to your kid, look, I can only play this board game one more time. I don't have this in me today. You know, oh, baby talk, I know you're my little baby and I'm picking you up. And sweetie, after a little bit, I'm going to put you down and I'll play with you in a different way. Because, of course, our needs matter too. But when we express them from a place of groundedness, that's very, very different than expressing them from a place of being triggered. Now, before we end, I just want to say how I began. There's a lot of thoughts kind of swirling. I'm sure we've talked about actually a whole range of different things. I really, if I'm in the audience at like an event, I always tell myself, like, what is the one loudest thing in my head right now? And let me make that like completely enough to walk away with. So I actually just kind of want to give you all a moment to think about one thing, just one. Because like a small shift inside ourselves, with our kid tonight or tomorrow, with a colleague, whoever it's with, small shifts have very, very big impact. And it's usually just when we're overwhelmed with things and something feels like too much that we can't make that shift. So please just hold on to one thing. And then please do something that we rarely do as parents, and you began it this way. Like, really take a moment to give yourself credit for coming. There's nothing more vulnerable to learn about and be open to learning about than parenting, because we love the heck out of our kids. And a message I just want to end with is that you are learning, you are unlearning, we're all figuring this out together. And at the same time, you are the right parent for your kid. And even the right parents deserve support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been such a rich conversation. I always forget what it's like when you bring... Don't leave. Hold on. when you bring a bunch of parents together, it's like medicine, as we all talk about all of the hard things. It's so beautiful to witness and be a part of. And it's funny that you said the one thing, because mine is definitely that perfect is creepy. I love that. So thank you so much. I have a couple things to say about outside, but do you want to do the picture first? Because it looks like people have to run.
Let's take a, yes, if you have the book, please hold it up. I love these pictures. Okay, let's see.
Do you want me to take it?
I'm not going to hold my own. Okay, San Francisco. 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. Thank you. But we have an exciting announcement.
Yes, we have an exciting announcement. One, I want to let you know about something special for attendees today and throughout the tour. A copy of That's My Truck comes with your ticket, and inside your book, there's a special note from Dr. Becky offering incredible prizes, including a one-to-one session with her. So don't forget to scan the book and open the QR code. And the second thing, yes, clap it up, clap it up. And the second thing is that Dr. Becky is going to be outside signing. If you're interested in meeting Dr. Becky, snapping a selfie, or getting your book signed, she'll be signing copies right after this. And you can also purchase her first book, Good Inside, at the front, along with my book, Mom Rage, The Everyday Crisis of Modern Motherhood. Thank you all so much for coming. Dr. Becky, thank you so much.